What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks into what should be a friendly morning chat show interview, only to find himself facing the most hostile interrogation of his career? George Clooney thought he was appearing on Lorraine Kelly's show to discuss his latest humanitarian work and upcoming film projects. What he got instead was a carefully orchestrated ambush that would leave viewers stunned and questioning everything they thought they knew about daytime television. This is the story of how a routine promotional appearance turned into television history, with accusations flying, tempers flaring, and ultimately, security being called to escort one of the biggest names in entertainment off the set. Before we dive into this incredible clash, make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below telling me what you think really motivated Lorraine's shocking behavior that day. The morning started like any other at the ITV studios in London. George Clooney had flown in specifically for a series of promotional interviews, and Lorraine Kelly's show was meant to be the friendly, easygoing start to his media tour. The actor, known for his charm and wit, had appeared on the show several times before, always delivering the kind of relaxed, entertaining conversation that made for perfect morning television. But something was different this time. From the moment Clooney walked onto the set, there was an unusual tension in the air. The production crew seemed on edge, whispering among themselves, and Lorraine herself appeared unusually stern as she reviewed her notes. "George, lovely to see you again," Lorraine said as he settled into the guest chair, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Though I have to say, this interview might be a bit different from our usual chats." Clooney, ever the professional, maintained his composure. "Different how? I thought we were here to talk about the new film and the foundation work." "Oh, we'll get to that," Lorraine replied, her tone taking on an edge that immediately put the audience on alert. "But first, I think there are some questions that need answering. Questions that your publicists have been dodging for months." The cameras were rolling live, and millions of viewers across the UK were settling in with their morning coffee, expecting the usual lighthearted banter. Instead, they were about to witness one of the most uncomfortable television moments in recent memory. "I'm not sure I follow," Clooney said, his famous smile faltering slightly. "What questions are we talking about exactly?" Lorraine leaned forward, her demeanor shifting completely from warm television host to investigative journalist. "Let's start with your recent comments about British journalism. You've been quite critical, haven't you, calling our press intrusive, suggesting we lack the sophistication of American media." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Clooney's eyebrows raised, clearly caught off guard by the aggressive opening. "Lorraine, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I've never made those statements. In fact, I've always spoken positively about working in the UK and with British media." "Have you, though?" Lorraine pressed, pulling out what appeared to be printed articles. "Because I have several quotes here that suggest otherwise. Would you like me to read them to our viewers?" The studio audience, who had been expecting a pleasant morning chat, began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the Lorraine Kelly show they knew. The host's usual warmth had been replaced by something much colder, more calculating. "I'd be very interested to see those quotes," Clooney replied, his voice remaining steady despite the obvious ambush. "Because if they exist, they're either taken completely out of context or they're fabricated." Lorraine's smile was sharp as a blade. "Fabricated? That's quite an accusation, George. Are you suggesting that reputable British publications are making up quotes?" "I'm suggesting that you might want to check your sources," Clooney shot back, his famous diplomacy beginning to crack. "Because I've never said anything negative about British journalism as a whole. Individual outlets, maybe, when they've behaved unethically. But that's hardly the same thing." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Camera operators were glancing at each other uncertainly, and the production team looked like they wanted to call a commercial break but couldn't find a natural moment to do so. "Unethically?" Lorraine seized on the word like a predator, sensing weakness. "And what would you know about ethics, George? This from a man who's built his career on charm and connections rather than actual talent?" The audience audibly gasped. Even by the standards of confrontational television, this was extraordinary. Clooney's face darkened, the famous Clooney charm evaporating entirely. "Excuse me?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Did you just question my professional credentials on live television?" "I'm questioning a lot of things," Lorraine replied, clearly relishing the moment. "Your talent, your sincerity, your right to lecture anyone about media ethics when you've spent decades manipulating the press to serve your own image." Clooney stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the studio floor. "I think there's been some kind of mistake here. This isn't an interview, it's an ambush. And frankly, it's beneath both of us. But Lorraine wasn't finished. She had clearly planned this moment carefully, and she wasn't about to let her target escape without delivering every prepared blow. Sit down, George. We're not done here, not by a long shot. The cameras continued to roll as one of Hollywood's biggest stars found himself in the most uncomfortable position of his career, facing a host who seemed determined to destroy him on live television for reasons that remain completely unclear to everyone watching, including Clooney himself. I said sit down, Lorraine repeated, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to surprise even herself. You came on this show to promote your little film and your precious foundation. Well, you're going to answer some real questions first. Clooney remained standing, his hands gripping the back of his chair. Real questions? What's real about this attack? You've ambushed me with fabricated quotes and personal insults. This isn't journalism, Lorraine. It's character assassination. Character assassination? Lorraine laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich coming from someone who spent his entire career assassinating the character of anyone who dares to criticize him. Tell me, George, how many journalists have you had blacklisted over the years? The studio audience was dead silent now, watching this surreal confrontation unfold. Production assistants were frantically whispering into their headsets, clearly trying to figure out what to do with a live show that had gone completely off the rails. Blacklisted? Clooney's voice rose slightly. What are you talking about? I've never had anyone blacklisted. This is getting ridiculous, Lorraine. What's this really about? This is about accountability, Lorraine shot back, standing up herself now, matching his posture. This is about a privileged Hollywood elite who thinks he can waltz into our country, use our media when it suits him, and then bad-mouth us behind our backs. I have never bad-mouthed British media or this country, Clooney said firmly. I own a home here. My wife practiced law here. We've contributed to British charities and causes. This accusation is completely unfounded. Lorraine waved dismissively. Your wife. Let's talk about them all, shall we? How convenient that you married a human rights lawyer just when your image needed some serious rehabilitation. Tell me, was that calculated or just a happy accident? The gasp from the audience was audible this time. Even the camera operators looked shocked. Bringing family members into a television ambush was crossing a line that even the most aggressive interviewers rarely crossed. Clooney's face went pale, then flushed red. You leave my wife out of this. Whatever your problem is with me, you do not bring my family into it. Oh, but everything's fair game when you're a public figure, isn't it? Lorraine pressed on relentlessly. That's what you've always said about privacy. That celebrities forfeit their right to privacy when they court publicity. So let's talk about your marriage, your politics, your foundation that seems to do very little actual work. Stop, Clooney said, his voice low and dangerous. Stop right now. You're making accusations that are not only false but potentially libelous. I came here in good faith to discuss my work, and you've turned this into some kind of personal vendetta. Personal vendetta? Lorraine's eyes glittered with something that looked almost like triumph. This isn't personal, George. This is professional. This is holding you accountable for years of hypocrisy and manipulation. What hypocrisy? Clooney demanded. What manipulation? You keep making these accusations without providing any evidence, any context, any explanation. This is insane. Lorraine reached for another stack of papers. Let's talk about your foundation's financial records, shall we? Very interesting reading. Lots of money coming in, not so much going to actual humanitarian causes. That's a lie, Clooney said flatly. Our financial records are public and transparent. Every penny is accounted for and goes directly to the causes we support. You're spreading false information on live television. Am I? Lorraine challenged. Or am I the first person with the courage to ask the questions that everyone else is too intimidated to ask? The questions your publicists and lawyers have been suppressing? The confrontation was spiraling completely out of control. Viewers across the country were watching in stunned disbelief as one of their most beloved morning show hosts systematically attacked one of the world's most respected actors with a series of increasingly outrageous accusations. You know what? Clooney said, pulling off his microphone. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. You've ambushed me with lies, attacked my wife, questioned my integrity, and made false accusations about my charitable work. This interview is over. You don't get to decide when this interview is over, Lorraine snapped. You came on my show. You'll leave when I say you can leave. Clooney stared at her in amazement. Are you threatening me? On live television? You do realize that millions of people are watching this, right? They can see exactly what you're doing here. What I'm doing, Lorraine said, her voice rising to match his, is my job, real journalism, something you clearly can't handle when you're not in control of the narrative. Real journalism? Clooney's voice was incredulous. Real journalism requires facts, sources, evidence. All you've provided are vague accusations and personal attacks. This isn't journalism, it's a witch hunt. The studio was in chaos now. Producers were rushing around, crew members were looking to each other for guidance, and the audience sat in stunned silence, watching what would surely become one of the most infamous moments in television history. A witch hunt? Lorraine's laugh was bitter. That's what powerful men always say when someone finally stands up to them, when someone refuses to be charmed and manipulated. Well, I'm not charmed, George. I see right through you. See through me to what? Clooney challenged. What exactly do you think you see? Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a television host who's lost her mind on live television. I see a fraud, Lorraine declared, her voice cutting through the studio like a knife. I see a man who's built his entire public persona on lies and manipulation. And I see someone who's about to be exposed for exactly what he is. Clooney shook his head in disbelief. This is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. You've accused me of being unethical, untalented, manipulative, dishonest about my charitable work, and calculating in my personal relationships, all without providing a single shred of evidence for any of it. The evidence is your reaction. Lorraine shot back. The evidence is how angry you're getting when someone finally asks you tough questions. The evidence is your inability to handle any criticism whatsoever. Criticism? Clooney's voice was rising now too. This isn't criticism, this is slander. And you're doing it on live television to millions of viewers. Do you have any idea what kind of legal trouble you're opening yourself up to? Legal trouble? Lorraine's voice took on a mocking tone. Is that a threat, George? Are you going to sue me for asking questions? How very Hollywood of you. When you can't control the narrative, you call the lawyers. It's not a threat. It's a statement of fact, Clooney replied, his voice deadly serious. You've just made several defamatory statements on live television. Statements that could seriously damage my reputation and my work. So yes, my lawyers will absolutely be reviewing this footage. Good, Lorraine said, crossing her arms defiantly. Let them review it. Let the whole world review it. Maybe it's time someone held you accountable for once in your privileged life. The studio director was frantically gesturing from the control room, clearly trying to signal for a commercial break. But Lorraine seemed oblivious to everything except her target. She was completely focused on Clooney, like a predator who had cornered her prey. Accountable for what? Clooney demanded. You keep saying that word, but you haven't specified a single thing I need to be held accountable for. Not one concrete example, not one verifiable fact. Just vague accusations and personal attacks. How about your environmental hypocrisy? Lorraine fired back. Flying around the world in private jets while lecturing everyone else about climate change? How about your political grandstanding while you live in luxury mansions? How about using your fame to influence political processes you don't understand? Clooney's patience finally snapped completely. That's it. I'm done. This is the most unprofessional, unethical interview I've ever experienced. You've crossed every line of journalistic integrity, and I will not participate in this character assassination any longer. He started to walk off the set, but Lorraine wasn't finished with him yet. Running away, George? She called after him. Can't handle a little scrutiny? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can dish it out, but you can't take it. Clooney stopped and turned back to face her, his famous composure finally cracking completely. I'm not running away from scrutiny. I'm walking away from a delusional television host who's having some kind of breakdown on live television. This isn't scrutiny, Lorraine. This is whatever personal issue you're working through, and I refuse to be your punching bag. Personal issue? Lorraine's voice rose to nearly a shout. This is about integrity. This is about truth. This is about not letting celebrities get away with manipulating the media and the public. Manipulating the media? Clooney turned back toward her, incredulous. You mean like what you're doing right now? Ambushing a guest with false accusations and personal attacks? If anyone's manipulating anything here, it's you manipulating this situation to create some kind of viral moment. The audience was completely silent now, transfixed by this unprecedented meltdown. Many were filming on their phones, already knowing they were witnessing television history in the making. Viral moment. Lorraine laughed harshly. You think this is about going viral? This is about journalism, real journalism, something you've clearly never experienced before. Real journalism involves facts, Clooney shot back. Real journalism involves research, verification, balanced reporting. What you've done here today is the exact opposite of journalism. It's tabloid sensationalism at its worst. Don't lecture me about journalism, Lorraine snapped. I've been doing this longer than you've been pretending to be an activist. I know what real journalism looks like, and it doesn't involve softball interviews with celebrities who think they're above criticism. Above criticism? Clooney's voice was filled with disbelief. I've been criticized plenty, by real journalists who do their homework and ask legitimate questions based on facts, not by television hosts who ambush guests with fabricated controversies. Lorraine stepped closer to him, her voice dropping to a more dangerous tone. Fabricated? Everything I've said today is based on careful research and investigation. Maybe you're just not used to anyone doing their homework before interviewing you. Then show me the homework, Clooney challenged. Show me the sources. Show me the evidence. Show me anything that backs up even one of your accusations. Because so far, all I've heard are empty claims and personal attacks. The evidence is your behavior, Lorraine insisted. The evidence is how you've reacted to every single question. The evidence is your inability to address any criticism without getting defensive and threatening legal action. I'm defensive because you've attacked my character, my work, my family, and my integrity, Clooney said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine anger. Any reasonable person would be defensive when faced with this kind of unprovoked assault. Unprovoked? Lorraine's eyes flashed. Your very presence here is a provocation. Your assumption that you can just waltz onto my show and get the easy, fawning interview you're used to. Well, not today, George. Not on my show. At this point, security personnel had appeared at the edges of the set, clearly having been called by the production team. The situation had gone so far beyond normal television protocol that intervention was becoming necessary. Security? Clooney noticed them immediately. You're having me escorted out for refusing to participate in your ambush? This is unbelievable. You're being escorted out for being disruptive and threatening, Lorraine declared, for being unable to handle basic journalistic inquiry. Basic journalistic inquiry? Clooney's voice was filled with amazement. You've accused me of being talentless, unethical, manipulative, financially dishonest, and politically calculating, all without evidence. That's not journalism, that's a hit job. Call it whatever you want, Lorraine said, her voice cold as ice. But this is my show, and you don't get to control the narrative here like you do everywhere else. As security moved closer, Clooney held up his hands. I don't need an escort. I'm leaving voluntarily. This has been the most bizarre and unprofessional experience of my career, and I want no part of it. Good, Lorraine called after him as he walked toward the exit. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, and next time you want to manipulate the British media, remember this moment. Clooney paused at the edge of the set and turned back one final time. I genuinely hope you get whatever help you need, Lorraine. Because what happened here today wasn't journalism, it wasn't entertainment, it was just sad. And with that, George Clooney walked off the set of Lorraine Kelly's show, leaving behind one of the most shocking moments in live television history. The cameras continued rolling as Lorraine stood alone on the set, breathing heavily, while the stunned audience sat in complete silence. What did you think of this incredible clash? Was Lorraine Kelly out of line? Or was she finally asking the tough questions that other interviewers were too intimidated to ask? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe for more shocking celebrity encounters that the mainstream media doesn't want you to see.